came out of the Scarborough Charter was the Queen's Black Clubs Caucus, and this was kind of like a way. I think this is the next slide. So this is the Queen's Black Clubs Caucus. As you can see, there's been already like a series of events that have taken place on campus. But the reason why I'm here talking about QVCC today is this coalition group of Black students through the caucus has kind of been a liaison between university to students. As we know today, we do not have any hardcore like data on like how many Black students are on campus, or you know how many Black students kind of identify as Black on campus. And so this is our way of connecting to Black students through Black clubs. Thank you. You guys could hear me though, right? Just okay. And so yeah, so today I'm here to kind of just go over what QVCC has done and our programming, and then I'll promise you like there is a point I'll land to eventually that kind of correlates with the AMS. But we work on programming and events, so we kind of like some of our objectives is catering to the student experience, which means events that are supported through the university, a Black formal, a Black graduation, and these events are held at different universities at different levels. And for Queens, we're kind of like still within our pilot years of planning these events.
a couple hours ago with people from the university relations trade marketing team. I'll save more expansion on this for the motion with me and Ryan. But as you can see from our amendment to the agenda, letter from assembly making it order. I also touched on my report, the Queensland Centennial Plan. Very exciting. We got more detail of it this last Senate. I know there was a ton of discussion. Leonie was present to speak for that. I look forward to hearing more about that in our official reports. But there was much discussion in Senate about the Centennial Plan, what it means to the university. I know the main point of concern raised was the future of the arts and humanities. There was a lot of really good discussion on the floor, and I know that it was great for Patrick Dean, who managed to ease some of the concerns with himself, saying that anybody who can advocate for the future of the arts and humanities is himself, and he's English prof, which is not your best. I know there's a variety of ways the university is gathering input on this plan. There's an upcoming town hall with Nick Knight, if any student leader can join. There's details available on the Queen's website. Additionally, there's a committee structure to review the future of the arts and humanities, which I was asked to appoint a delegate. Kat, our communications director, is on that committee. If you have anything that you feel relevant to be voiced in this committee, please speak to me, and I can make sure that's represented on the committee. So other things I've been up to, I attended the Journal Editor in Chief debate. The perspective team was great. Meg and Sarah spoke really well. I liked how they spoke about how they're going to work with AMS moving forward. And Meg has really great work for this year so far, so really exciting. So I was glad to vote. We have time. Going on, I've been meeting with some of the Backslaw presidents bi-weekly. With all of them, we've discussed interest. These have been really helpful meetings, and I just want to express gratitude for being taking that time of your calendars to meet with me. I know by now, hopefully everybody knows by now that I was kind of a Backslaw guy coming into this, and Faculty Society is near and dear to me, and that's how I got my start at AMS. So it's really great to start trying to incorporate the Backslaws into the future of the AMS. As they really mean a lot to me, so hopefully we can keep going more closely into the future. Lastly, shout out the elections team and Marcom team. A lot of work went into administering, promoting the election. I know that's one of my portfolios, so the last month we could fire on all cylinders. So thank you to that whole team. I'm going to hear more later. Thank you to everybody from governance and Marcom. I know with this election period, it kind of brings in an awkward time in student governance. I know I see myself and many others that this is definitely a bit of a turbulent and emotional time. I know we've been fully vested in our roles the past 8 months, and it's a little weird seeing that there's going to be somebody new in these positions just in a few months. So I hope everybody finds time for themselves over these next few months and manages to find time to also finish up all the projects we've been working on for the year. Lastly, I want to congratulate the newly elected executive team of Team Jaya, of Jenna, Elena, and Alyssa. I have full confidence in this team. They're talented from top to bottom. I think they're going to have a great year next year with the AMS. And I know specifically I've had the privilege to work very closely with Jenna throughout the year, and I know she's going to excel her role. So we're going to be all right, guys. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. We're going to be hearing a report from our VP, VP Calgary. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Not too many new updates to report on. This is working? Oh, it is working. Okay, sorry, guys. Not too much new to report on since the last assembly. I've been working on a lot of transition material for the incoming Vice President of Operations. So it's been a blast working with someone I already know. I'm very excited to see what she's capable of when her term starts. All of the services are doing really, really well. We're just chugging along, getting ready for meeting week. Just a quick note from my report. The Queen's Journal has actually won a couple of awards issued by the Canadian University Press. They won 4 awards for the John H. Macdonald Award. One of them is actually the Student Publication of the Year. I know not everyone always shares the same sentiment around this service, but it's really great to see that their work is being recognized because those staff and volunteers, they do work really, really hard. Just a couple of things about budget as well. You probably saw motion number 12 to increase the budget. We decided to strike that off because through a couple different conversations with our key stakeholders, we didn't actually feel like we needed a greater budget allocation to put on a good educational campaign when the time comes. We have agreed with the city to work towards one fee structure, so I'm very excited to come back March 3rd with the number, and hopefully it's good news. I'm pretty sure it is, but hopefully everyone feels like that as well. Not too much more to add on to. As Owen mentioned, we did have a meeting with the trademark and licensing office today. So excited to update you guys on some of those findings. And other than that, I think I'll pass it off to you.
Okay, I think I'm gonna not use the mic. Hi everyone. Okay, so as I said during my report, congrats to all the incoming assembly members. I'm really excited to be retiring. I hope you guys have a blast next year. But again, like the journal said in a recent article, we can't take our foot off the gas just yet. So with that in mind, let's get into the updates. So commission restructure. So today you're going to see a restructure coming from the Campus Affairs Commission as well as the Social Issues Commission. They've worked really hard to make these portfolios better for their incoming. So I really hope that you guys enjoy the presentations that they give. Elections Ontario and Elections Canada. So for those of you who are not aware, we have a provincial election coming soon, potentially a federal election coming as well. You all have a responsibility to vote. That is how you partake in democracy, so vote. But we have a little bit more information as well, as we're having an all candidates meeting on the 25th. So more information will be posted about that. We've been working very closely with the City of Kingston as well as the Rector's Office to figure out what we can do. And I think we have some really good information coming out your way. Next up is clubs. So clubs, over the last few months, we have a discussion item about this as well. Clubs has been a very, very hard portfolio to support, as well as just have people in as well because of the amount of capacity as well as the work that it does. We're really looking into automation. Owen supported a lot of that as well through, for instance, having constant contact as well as onboarding us onto a help desk to help with tracking information and hopefully have this be the first step towards a customer relations platform that we can use to track the clubs and how they work and everything else related to them. As you'll see in the presentation as well, we do have a reorganization coming through for ORT. So for those of you who are not aware, ORT has continued to change structure recently, but hopefully this one sticks. It's gone from being an AM role to being a senior manager role, and over the last 2 years it's remained under the VPA portfolio, but today we'll be motioning to move it to the president's portfolio. There's more information on that. There is a presentation and I'll be giving one at the very end. As well as we have, last but not least, we're hoping that we can get some conversations going with clubs through a town hall, so please stay tuned for that. And if you've ever been a part of a club, please make sure you come and you participate as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that PTO Sunday. We're now going to be hearing reports from our ex officios. To start, we're going to have the chairperson of the board, Grisha, give us a report, please.
Alright. Hi everyone, I'm gonna forego the microphone, seeing as there's been some technical difficulties. I hope everyone's keeping well as we approach reading week. I'm gonna provide a little bit of a summary of some of the hard work that our committees have been working on over the past couple of weeks. So Finance and Risk Committee, FNR, has established a timeline to complete all of our outstanding risk investigations and is preparing to address them in the upcoming committee meetings. Additionally, the committee is organizing a comprehensive transition meeting focused on the risk register to facilitate a smooth handover to the incoming executives and the board chair. In terms of governance, the governance committee is in the process of reviewing board policy to ensure governance frameworks remain effective, up to date, and in line with the organization's strategic direction. The committee has also commenced preliminary discussions on board hiring for the upcoming year, and more to come on that for next assembly. Strategic Planning Committee is currently meeting regularly and remains focused on developing and refining the organization's strategic direction. And if you have any further questions or require any further information, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Now going to be hearing from the Senate Caucus Chair, Regis Fellow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you see me in the last 2 weeks and asked me what I'm doing, I would have said everything, because it was just, this was a 351-page Senate meeting. I don't know how we had so much going on, but we did. We had a good 50-minute conversation about the bicentennial vision. As the President mentioned, again, this is not a plan. Even once we have a plan, we still then need to vote to pass all the individual things once they're actually ready to be changed. So there's not a whole lot that can just kind of go away that can be changed without us knowing about it. Students will be knowing about it. This will be a conversation our great-great-great-grandmothers will be having for years to come. But it was a good conversation, and if you've read the bicentennial vision paper, it points to a lot of good connections to where we were as a university in the 1930s and 40s, and how 100 years later we are in a fairly similar position. Technology is changing rapidly. We just came through, might be going into another weird economic period. we're reevaluating the place of arts and humanities in the university sector and how we can financially support them. Governments are going through rapid change, so it is a lot to be trying to figure out. I've asked all senators to try to have conversations with their faculty societies about this plan and try to get as much student input as we can about what does Queens mean to students. How do we identify ourselves as a university? What is important and needs to preserve, and what things do we need to look at changing to be the best university we can possibly be. The board and the Senate will be getting together in early March to discuss that, which is why you're going to be seeing a lot of conversations about it now, and this long-term strategic plan will be the highlight of our conversation. Other notable items I wanted to mention, we did unfortunately table the strategic research plan due to a lack of Indigenous consultation in December. That was then passed without any concerns at the January meeting. A lot of the individuals who brought up the concerns were quite pleased with the consultation process. Happened to that, we passed the modularization of many degrees in the Faculty of Arts and Science as well as other programs. If you haven't heard about that, basically we looked at the other universities and went, hey, wait a second, why do we make our students do so many extra credits to earn a major that different universities just don't? So we made it easier. Now you can theoretically take a major and a couple of other minors, so hopefully some of our smaller departments can pick up a few extra minor students and just get some more funding. And that way is mainly what I was looking at. We had renewal of research centers, and we're looking at changing how to approve teams. That motion was sent back to the committee for review after there were a few concerns about how appointments to the search committees went. There's a lack of democratic processes and more again by the current dean and senior administration. That was concerning. Other than that, a lot happened. A lot's going to keep coming up. The next one, not good. It's sometimes a good sign, but not a good sign when this many senior administrators want to meet with me. So we're looking at trying to get some plans in next year and finalizing things, which I will update you all on later. I'm not too worried. Just I'm hoping I can keep my next course until 3 weeks because it's getting complicated. Thank you.
Yes, we're now going to be hearing, or would have been hearing from the undergraduate trustee, Vivian. Unfortunately, she is not able to make it, so she sends her regards. So now we're going to be hearing from the university rector, Steve Dale. The floor.
Do you want me to try my no live stream to hear us?
I would prefer you use the mic, yeah.
Hi everyone. So I won't reiterate anything on my written report, but I will provide a couple of updates since being submitted. So today we launched our first day of a week of giveaways on the Recture Instagram account. So you can enter to win tea room gift cards, a diploma frame for your degree. That's like over $100 there. Queen sweaters and a book written by Chancellor Emeritus Maurice Claire Vaughan that you wrote last year. So check those out if you want to promote them or enter yourself. Board of Trustees is coming up next month, so please reach out to me if you want to share anything to inform the discussions that I will have at my committee meetings. And if you would like to attend the open session, you can email trustee@queensu.ca. I think this is the third time the bicentennial was brought up. The principal's holding a town hall for students this Wednesday. So you got an email from principal@queensu.ca. You can register. I will do that at 6:30 this Wednesday. So if you want to talk with him, that's a great opportunity. And I will reiterate, Ontario elections are coming up. You will receive information from a combination of myself and the AMS. And if you would like to get specific marketing information to a communications person on your team instead of your inbox, just send me an email and we'll update that list. And lastly, I will probably leave early tonight because at the beginning of assembly I got a call that my water heater has broken and it's leaking alone. So I will be dealing with that at some point tonight.
So sorry, Pat. We're going to be moving on to statements by students. The first statement is going to be coming from our CRO. Anderson, sorry, I don't have your first name. Apologies. But you have the floor.
Sean, bring him in the right side.
Hello everyone, I'm Andrew. I'm the All Matter Society's Chief Returning Officer. So this winter's election represents us with a return of 20.4%, notable as the highest in 5 years since 2020. This meant that referendum groups only needed to obtain 51% approval for their fees to pass. For the executive elections, Jenna Almer was elected as president. Elena Brzezinski was elected as Vice President of Operations, and Elisa Parisa was elected as Vice President, University of Affairs. All new student activity fees passed, including the Family Mature Student Bursary Fund, QHACs, Queen's University Muslim Student Association, and the Iranian Association of Queen's University. The two student activity fee increases of the Queen's General Mandatory Fee and the CFRC 1019 at an individual opt-out fee both failed. All triennial review groups passed, including Queen's Legal Aid, the Peer Support Center, Queen's Project on International Development, the World University Services of Canada, OPIRG Kingston, Queen's Give Active Ambassadors Club, Queen's Health Outreach, Queen's Healthcare and Business Conference, the Gender Affirming Systems Project, Queen's Buddies, Queen's Bands, Queen's Students for Literacy, Jack.org, the Levana Gender Advocacy Center, Queen's Entrepreneurs Competition, and Queen's Genetically Engineered Machine. In regards to the plebiscite questions, we voted that the bused program should continue as a service available to all collegiate university students. And lastly, ASSA students voted to not increase the mandatory ASSA membership fee from $31.55 to $37.67, an increase of $6.12. And this question was for our science students only. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll be hearing a report from our Secretariat, Vivian. You have the floor.
Thank you. So I just want to start off by thanking this version of assembly. I know a big part of our mandate this year has been to create space for all students in our assembly, so we're really happy today. In part of that, creating space and looking back or in the past towards the justice that has taken place, just learning more about our history and how we move forward. So to that end, I'm and I have a couple of different things I just want to share with everyone, because not everyone's familiar with the history of things and things that have taken in the past. So most of the research that I've done has been through the external. I was able to track down when the ASSA Society was something like vice president in the history. That was in 1970 when they added vice president, and then in 1980 they added two vice presidents. So that's where two years started. Other interesting things that I found was some constitutional clauses that still exist. So, for example, in our constitution today, representation based on the soil referendum, that was a big debate that took place in 1981 when they added that clause to the constitution. It's still the exact same one as it exists today. The referendum times to it. They were close to it at the time, but it ended up getting passed, and it's still in our constitution. Other interesting things I found was in 1976, the AMS Assembly passed a motion that required Assembly to take a stance on every referendum question that went to students. So all of the non-fee and plebiscite questions that would go out to students for referendum had Assembly either say they are favor, against, or would be neutral. So it's kind of interesting because today we think that our Assembly is strictly for space, and Assembly is also supposed to take the state. And then fast forward to 1987, they had a huge debate about whether a government should continue to stand to the referendum questions. At the time, the motion was defeated in a tie. There was 13 favor of taking stance and 13 votes. I've been tracked down, but they decided that someone should remain neutral. There's quite a few for over a decade on the state stance for representation. 1987 was also the time they state-realized referendum questions that might really today. Claims that we've had for a while. There was also a debate around that time too about whether groups should be able to add language for referendum questions to say why you should vote in their favor. So kind of very similar to the completely debate we had in the last assembly. Assembly then, assembly today, voted to not statement. The tax the last bit of just kind of last bit of that. The Journal of American Office used to be commissioned in back in 1988. This is kind of used to be known or initially to be the manager of non-financial services for the society, so we used to oversee Wacom, QCon, elections, judicial assembly, and so kind of a vast portfolio of the oversee. So glad I didn't do that, but most literally.
For that. We're now going to be hearing a statement from the chair of the Assembly Review Committee, the CGO of the Justice.
Yeah, we met for the first time last week. There's not much to say. It was very busy time as well as just election wrapping up. It was just very preliminary going over the goals of the committee and kind of getting the interest from everyone there. But I'm looking forward to seeing what the committee does, and I think something that everyone in the assembly should look forward to is we plan on developing a survey to kind of gauge interest on topics that you all are interested in terms of assembly. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you. We're now going to be hearing a statement in regards to QBAC fossil fuel investment petition endorsement update from Andrew.
Basically have to eat it. Oh, like this?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Hi everyone. Hello assembly members. So as you know, assembly voted to endorse the fees as members on the time emergency for QBAC. Petition to strike out fuel was in investment at the representation assembly. The aim of this petition also aligns with our stated environmental principles and policies fuels. As such, we now strongly encourage all of you assembly members to help QBAC on this petition and to further advocate to the university to the best of so the statement I'm just going to give is just kind of update on what I've been doing as representation and with you as assembly members as well. So the first thing we've been working on is kind of petition and stance on it. The AMS has a statement about our endorsement of the petition on the AMS website and the review platform and we did look through the AMS LinkedIn and post the AMS our goal is to raise awareness of the petition and provide a firm notice in regards to issue divestment as well as the I also encourage you on getting other governments and further on feedback as yes, also as well. Have them considered by direct government. And then of course, then on all of you guys, we notified the assembly members of the investigation and are regarding it. The assembly members and Gospel Society are clear about the petition, rather than the revolution of really very deputies or reference themselves. If you go to the investigation at that assembly, society or whatever you support it materially. Like it was me, you will do that as well for so from our side, our next steps are to continue raising awareness about the petition to other public media channels, media, leaders, provide the market for the petition, and being at should the university side itself.
So much for that. And we're now going to be hearing from Keswick on the chair of the committee on social planners.
Yeah, we met again before this assembly, just reviewing again our AMS's relationship with CUSA, and then later on this semester we will also be taking a look at the group. Not much to know. I think after reading week we'll be going into kind of the financials of CUSA, so that should be very interesting. But other than that, if you're interested in our relationship at all and have any thoughts, please feel free to reach out. Yeah.
All right. Now for the next motion or the next item on the agenda, your statement of the student regarding triennial review, appendix 81. The student present here today. Would they like to speak on it? Alright, since they're not here today, I will be reading it out. Alright, so this statement was submitted by a student via the AMS Governance Form Center. The current structure of student committee referenda at Queen's University is a direct consequence of the student choice initiative introduced by the Doug Ford government in 2019. This policy allows students to opt out of many ancillary fees, undermining student organizations and clubs that rely on stable funding. Although the SCI was struck down in court and is no longer in effect, Queens has failed to return to its previous model, continuing a system that forces clubs to fight for their survival in a contentious, high-stakes election process. This approach weakens student organizations by fostering uncertainty, discouraging long-term planning, and creating an environment where student leaders must divert time and energy away from their initiatives to campaign for funding. The requirement for clubs to justify their existence in repeated referenda creates an unnecessary burden that not only destabilizes clubs, but also pits students groups against each other for financial support. It also puts a larger burden on the club's commission as they are forced to distribute their limited funding to the many groups who require. Furthermore, the triennial review process lacks legitimacy within this framework. Since fees are already optional, students have the ability to opt out. It is redundant and unfair to force organizations through an additional barrier just to maintain their ability to operate. Rather than supporting the vibrancy of student life, this system undermines the very clubs and services that contribute to the Queen's experience. It is time for Queens to reconsider this flawed system, return to a model that ensures stability for student organizations, fosters collaboration instead of competition, and allows clubs to focus on their purpose rather than their survival. Right. Are there any other statements on the floor right now? Chair recognizes Jenna.
Today, so I just think by acknowledging the violations of the policy part 9, section 6, 1, I think I really take this opportunity to say that I respect the importance of integrity and neutrality of the election. And I appreciate the efforts of everyone that's involved in ensuring that there's been a fair election process. Also, just want to say that when I look at accountability of the mistakes over my part and recognize the importance of maintaining this challenge program of the The principle of neutrality is essential in fostering trust and fairness in student elections and ensuring that all candidates on an equal playing field. As we move forward in my role as express, I want to just reiterate that I am continue to committing to standards, not only in elections, but also in all of our governance practices, just to make sure that there's a maintenance of integrity of our democratic process. And as well as the really understand. I just want to realize this often I can continue to be driven and recognize each of us fair. Yeah, I look forward to
Jenna, are there any other statements on the floor at this time? Seeing as there are none, we will now be moving on to the question period. So to start, we have one question to Rector Puchek-Hale from Commissioner Fu, and it follows: how will the never mind, go for it.
how can you who's represented on the school board committee for responsible investing. We're starting time. That was the original question. Are we going back to the original question? Okay, I'll just go. I'll go for it. So, thank you, Commissioner Fu, for asking me the question. There's two different questions you're seeing. So I'd like to acknowledge that when the agenda was published on Friday night, when I saw the question for the first time, I reached out to the AMS about an issue with the basis of the question, and after my discussion with CEO Cindy, we changed it, but I wanted to transparently explain the situation, so you aren't left wondering, and hopefully it'll also be clarifying for one aspect of policies. So, the Principals Review Committee for Responsible Investing is not a standing committee with a time deadline. So the current committee that was formed was to consider a petition for all Queen's University of Parkside Investments, and the committee that I sit on will be dissolved when its work is completed for this particular special request. If a new petition related to divestment from fossil fuels or any other matter is submitted according to the review procedure and found to have met the standards for holding a review, a new committee will be formed as defined by the responsible investing policy actions as. It's not a given that the director would be on that committee, therefore I can't answer the original question based on in relating to a potential future committee that has membership as it stands. So that clarifies things hopefully, but I didn't feel good about ending it there, which is why we decided, or the AMS decided to make the change. So I can answer that question up there about how I can support the AMS in endorsement of the QAC petition. So there are a number of recommendations. I only have a couple of minutes, but I can continue this conversation with them in a meeting at any time. These aren't actually particularly unique to any other issue or request I come across. So the first is I can have a conversation with the principal, the board chair, and or the investment committee chair. If you take a look at the last line of my monthly reports, every single month is always the same. Reach out to me if you have questions, need support, would like to share an experience that can help you price places to the administration. This really is not an empty promise. I really do need it, and every single month I take items raised to me by students and I bring them to the administration, and that's how I have my conversations with them. I can, if the AMS wants to give me some points, I can bring it to the principal promptly. The principal does determine the membership of the Responsible Investing Review Committee when that committee is struck, and so I can certainly advocate for a student who the AMS would like to see sit on the committee. The second thing is I can set up a meeting with a member of the administration to facilitate a conversation. I did that last month with the AMS and SGS presidents when they need to get important information clarified about the data prior to AMS assembly. I can clarify any confusion about policies and committees and other systems at Queens that are very often difficult to find information or understand or apply. I do not always have all the answers, but I can find them. I can do anything and make it as possible. All I ask is for 24 hours. Finally, when students come to me for support, I always make a point to recommend steps that empower them. So I will always keep using my voice, but it's important that I'm not the only voice the university is hearing. And so in the case of the AMS, they actually have some additional abilities that are beyond average students. So here's what I would recommend. My personal communication approach is to diversify platforms to reach students who may not be getting through on just one social platform. So use your AMS Central Instagram page and the undergraduate email distribution list that you have so you can literally reach every single AMS member. You can submit a letter to the editor in the Queen's Journal or pitch an opinions piece. I do this every single month, and it's a really great way to connect with Queens. You can also set up a booth in the Queen's Center to talk about the petition and hand out posters with the QR codes to the form so students can consider signing it. And lastly, maybe the most important, the AMS president submits a written report and has a 5-minute oral speech to the Board of Trustees during open session 4 times per year. So, President Romney,
I recommend that you bring up the petition during your time in March, and you will be in front of the people who the petition is actually addressed to. So let them know about it. Say that the AMS assessment voted to enforce it, and if you want them to take a certain action, just ask for it. So those are my recommendations to the AMS, how I can support, and I'd love to follow up in the meeting so we can actually have a discussion instead of me just answering.
Thank you for that, Nikki. Are there any other questions on the floor at this moment? Seeing as there are none. Oh, apologies.
Vicky, I was wondering if you could clarify this. So aside from the meeting and with what board chair and any of the other members that we use, is there anything like specifically if a committee was to be struck, like would there be anything that you would be able to like ask the board members? I think you are the only board member that has it for like the entire student body. And we appreciate the feedback and we are looking at is there anything like within your personal capacity like as director that you're able to do one specifically from the petition like the petition?
Yeah, so I can talk to the board. So I sit on the board along with student trustee Alrari and Kugawa. So those are the other two students. So we both, when we meet with the board 4 times a year, have pretty robust conversations in closed session, and those are things that we just talk about. So when I say like reach out to me at the beginning of my report today, because I'm about to talk to the board, like these are the things you can bring points that you want me to raise in closed session. Obviously, I will always bring my own points and experiences, but it's important that I'm holding multiple perspectives and views of the student body. Because the petition is directed to the board and I might sit on that committee, I can't promote it on like a social media platform or sign it because they'll immediately say you're not on that committee because you're I would need to be on the committee to be able to respond to the question.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions on the floor at this time? I see as there are none, we'll have the next order of business. That is the minutes. All right. Motion 2, approval of the minutes moved by Secretary Garfidian, seconded by Emma Capstick, is that the AMS Assembly approve the meeting minutes for the meeting January 20th, 2025.
So I'll briefly speak to the main ones for 70 pages long, so a lot of the job so some of the screen that we use for making this pretty options for so we have to keep a motion and as well as the motion after. So I do apologize for that. There were some issues that we're always working on. And other than that, we did our best.
Next motion on the floor is motion 3. Oh, sorry. Apologies. All those in favor of this motion, please use your placard. All those opposed? All those who choose to abstain. This motion clearly passes. We'll now be moving on to motion 3, fall term minutes, moved by Secretary Garfidian, seconded by President Rocky. And it is that the AMS Assembly approve an extension on the release of the September and December meeting minutes until March 31st, 2025. Secretary Garfidian.
Pretty self-explanatory. We're still working on it. The more positive we also look at
that. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your placard. All those opposed? All those who choose to abstain? Motion clearly passes. All right, we'll be moving on to the next motion, new stuff. That is motion 4, trademark concerns, moved by President Rocky and seconded by Chaudhary. It is that the AMS Assembly expresses concern with the process undertaken by the Queen's Licensing and Trademarking Office and its associated harm to student experience at Queen's, and directs the speaker to write a letter to the trademarking office and the principal with the concerns expressed. You guys
Okay. This is just a brief. I know this is a problem that many assembly members have already spoken to us about. So this is just a bit of our averaging of the assembly and what our advocacy look like. We'll just go through a brief background of the situation. Like,
It's great that everyone has their laptops out, because you can interact now with this. If you guys want to search up licensing and trademark policy, it would be a great way to follow along with kind of what we're talking about. Might help you stay a bit engaged and maybe learn a new product. But the licensing and trademark office has always existed. It's housed under the university relations, department of the school. This office essentially monitors and upholds the Queen's brand organization as it does with so much. Trademarks are all registered with the Canadian Intellectual Property Office. They have a link on the trademark website to access it. You can also search up intellectual property. You can figure out what Queen's actually has on trademarks. So all of their trademark items would be on this website dating back to 1984 all the way to almost present day 2019. This is just a broad overview of what their policy entails. They refer to it as the protection overview. Some of it we might already know, some we might not. We know that all trademark items or any kind of product that uses the trademark of Queen's must be by this office. It's extended now, so it's not just in store or any kind of retail store on campus. Anything sold physically or digitally must be approved by trademark. Further to that, anything unbranded, so a product that does not use any kind of trademark that is sold alongside something that uses Queen's intellectual property, must also now be approved by trademark. I'm not sure exactly when this policy came to light, but I think it's been about so there's been some changes to this policy, and this is really the important part that I'm interested in asking. Just going to the next slide. I'll outline this because Queen's does have the authority over anything unbranded that's sold in our on-campus retailers like Tractor and all of these retail stores, they sell items that use the Queen's intellectual property, and anything that you bring in that does not use that intellectual property must still seek approval because it must uphold these values. Today we met with trademark and licensing. I'll let Luke touch on that, but one of the key parts that needs life is that students were consulted in this process. I'm not sure what students were consulted. I don't have any of those details, but I'm not sure if they were consulting the right students, the wrong students. Can all of us agree in this room what the values are? I don't know. We'll figure out, I guess, as we navigate this whole situation. And these are just some operational key challenges, and I say operational because it's burdening a lot of our retailers right now on campus. You can see that turnaround time has been an issue. It's an administrative burden as well. It's very tedious. More often than not, maybe 10 times out of 10, you submit something, you get a denial, and you have to go and make corrections that follow their guidelines and their policies. So you're seeing that very often. Turnaround time is not great. So that sucks. Policy is also a moving target as well. We've noticed that when students come up with an idea that the university does not have documented in their guidelines, they put a pause on communication, and then they change their policy or they add onto it conditions, and then they get applied and they get back to what previous requirement setting. So there's a couple of key operational challenges that we want to run into.
So the most recent updates from this issue is the use of Queen trademark and green products because of reasoning from the Queen
trademark office, unfortunately, happening.
And the update from today's meeting is that while there seems to be, we're glad that they were able to start a dialogue. That's all we were able to do today. While there was a good conversation in 30 minutes we did have today in Hutchinson, I know Elena and Jenna were also present. I had noted that this is not a short-term issue. It continues, we will continue to have this for years to come. And so we're making sure our incomings are clear. This continues. But while the team was, we really did appreciate their ability to meet with us. It wasn't exactly a productive meeting, and I don't think we walked away with much progress made. So we'll be looking to continue our advocacy and do whatever we need to make sure that our members get it. So just want to elaborate on why this is harmful. As Ian spoke, it's quite frustrating having one team of branding people decide how the Queen's trademark can be used. As I noted, the brand Queens, I mean, we all sit here from all of our perspective, faculty, society, all of our diversity experiences, the brand Queens can mean something so different to so many people. I'm sure we're no strange to that, student leaders. But this administrative and bureaucratic barrier is becoming a barrier to student life and student business on campus. I know that the frustration of many of the retailers, or even just Backstocks trying to get merch. We'll have some on the next slide of just some images from the community and just some of these designs that have been denied, which, I mean, look like Queen's values to me. As I said, you can figure out exactly what Queen's values are. But it's quite frustrating because this is limiting student creativity, student expression in our business, which is upsetting. So what can we do as Assembly? While we do respect the authority as Queens, we do think that they should listen to us as to ensure that these enacted authorities do not harm student life. Currently, myself and Ian are confident that the way that these authorities are currently being enacted is a threat to student life, as a threat to student expression, student business, and everything I said before. We hope that this firm stands from our Assembly, the highest governing body of the AMS, will make it clear that we're going to continue the advocacy moving forward, and we hope that a letter will help to clearly outline our concerns to both the principal and the trademark office. Yeah.
I'll just echo some of what President Rocky said in terms of universities should respect. But we are seeing a bit of misuse of it. We're not sure what the future holds with some of their changes that they have. So this letter is not something that we sent out immediately tomorrow or Monday. We still need more information to learn how the trademark and licensing office we met with today, they have expressed that they are open to the dialogue. So we're hoping to engage in that dialogue and see what comes of it. So this is definitely a long-term project, and we expect the two of us to come back to the next assembly with things. And a letter would certainly be sent to all assembly members to review as well. So it's really important that we align ourselves. We all feel the same way as we love for discussion to better understand our views.
Any questions on the board this time? Nikki?
Thank you. I'd like to request to amend the motion to suggest that you also address it to the Vice Principal of University Relations, Michael Frazier. He oversees the trademark office, and I would also like to request that in the letter you CC myself, and if you CC me, I will then be able to bring that letter to one of the committees that is on the Board of Trustees, ERD, External Relations Development. The University Relations Vice Principal reports to that committee, and our jurisdiction is branding, trademarking, risk, and so that will allow me to have conversations.
Right, so that was an amendment, right?
That's correct.
Are there any seconders for this amendment at this time? Are we having seconders? So we're going to be voting on this amendment at this time now. All those in favor of this amendment, please, Director Wichita, please use your placard. All those opposed? All those who choose to abstain? This motion really passes. Alright, so we'll now be going on to motion 4, trademark, or back to the original motion, which is motion 4, trademark concerns, which is somewhat, or yeah, we're still going to be voting on this right now. So,
Color green.
No, nothing to do with environmental sustainability. The color green is not part of the color palette. They're identified but they have expressed that no, that there can be green in general because one, it's sold alongside trademark items, and the green is associated with having responsibilities. So while we can't use any of these trademarks, we cannot produce any unbranded merchandise green because it's sold alongside branded items, or it's sold along its property, whether it is and that does not operate it does not work.
Okay. So what is my color? What's your question? Oh, hi, for anyone who I haven't met, this is Sarah Levy Crawford, and this is my picture of tricolor. Sorry. My question is, so, like, does that mean that tricolor yeah, so this has been an ongoing conversation with trademarking for a while since I took over the position. Initially green and darker color, and everyone's familiar with it. The tricolor and a ton of other groups on campus carry as well. I know that you know carry the colors past. As of now, it looks like that was no longer permitted after previously accepted and added into the policy guidebook. Currently, the guidebook that we are working off of is from October 2024. We have not received any updates from Queen's Brand about the new guidebook or any changes to it. So this is the first that I'm hearing that regarding that green color. It's removable. Sorry, what was the second? That was it. I was like clarifying. The color.
Right, are there any other questions on the floor at this time? Jack.
Jack Walker. Two questions. One, is the plan for the letter that all the faculty societies and various members of the Assembly will be co-signed on that? Because if not, I would support doing that already. The second question is just about the actual branding stuff. To what extent is this idea that stuff that doesn't actually use Queen's trademark, like, to what extent is that enforceable? Like Tall Fry started selling merch. Like, it's on Queen's campus, but would that actually be something they could enforce the sale of? Like, is it completely separate? I don't know, I'm just curious, like, the degree to which that's actually something they can
I think I'm happy to clarify on the letter. So the letter, I mean, we're happy to figure out specifics of the letter. It could also be amended to the assembly to exactly who signed on it, but the idea of the letter from assembly would show that not only just whatever faculty society methods you assign, but the body itself. So I think in the past that held more weight than the individual faculty society. I would figure that out for a return perspective. But yeah, collectively as an assembly, that's what historically, and so we put the language what we did off of, as to what we used to do in the past as a collective stand for something like this.
In terms of your second question, there's a couple control mechanisms that the university has. If any group like needs to sell anything that comes trademark, it has to be produced by a licensee. So this is a list of companies on their website that are authorized to produce trademark. The university has the right to audit
So if a group decided to place an order using Queen's trademark without this and the licensee produce this, there's the repercussions there, not only for the vendor, but as well as the who has selling it. Like with selling merchandise on Queen's property, they do have that authority over anything unbranded. It lies within their financial purview. Their policy is on their website. That is what we're doing today. I'm saying that you can go onto their website and you can find their entire policy. Talking to students, I've heard that they request for this policy, they have not received it. So you can look on your laptop now and see if you can find it. But there are repercussions there. I don't know if I answered your question, so if you want to ask me parts of it again.
Again, I can talk loud. I guess as a follow-up to that, I'm more wondering about what mechanisms the university actually has to enforce the stuff with non-branded merchandise on campus. Again, at least I'm aware of a lot of groups that sell their own merch that doesn't use any kind of Queen's trademark and have never encountered any issues. And just sort of off the top of my head, it seems like the sort of thing that would be kind of impossible to act on if you're playing whack-a-mole with hundreds of groups that are producing batches of 25 sweaters. So I'm just curious about to what extent, like how Queens actually in practice like executes this.
So I can speak fully to it, but I can say that when the university is made aware of a violation to any type of their intellectual property or trademarks, they might issue a warning, but it does basically cover the warning. So licensees are obviously being watched more closely, and for the sake of their business continuing, they'll want to follow these guidelines, otherwise they might lose that licenseship. You're correct in saying like there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people producing things that contain the word Queens or the cube or anything like that, and it is a really big undertaking, and I don't think that they currently have the infrastructure to be able to monitor all of it. But the ones that are going through the proper procedures, like Tricolor Outlet, they're obviously aware of and monitoring it closely.
But for items that don't use any Queen's intellectual property and are sold on campus, how does that like that's
yeah? So
the,
I guess like their argument from what I have heard is that it's representing the Queen's brands by being on Queen's University campus, and therefore has to uphold certain standards.
Okay, so they're treating it the same as the trademark.
Yes.
Any other questions at this time? Shauna?
Mom's law president to that. Just a quick question about like, I would not in the context of like actual businesses, but let's say if there are individual like student groups on campus that are like ratified or AMS or International Society, they have Queens in their name and they're like branding as a club involves in color and green. Would that mean they would have to rebrand their club to allow Queens search and all of that? Like, is that what these consequences would be?
I see Tricolor had been stand up and after just one
So my understanding of the color green, besides it being my favorite color, is it depends on the situation. So, because when I first heard about the green, I was like, well, purple is not a Queen's University color. To my understanding, there needs to be a reason why that green is being used. So, for example, I did a Bachelor of Fine Art, and green is our program colors that we will wear, and the campus bookstore sells green crew necks that say University Bachelor of Fine Art. So, my inclination is that like the fine arts department will be allowed to sell green sweaters because that's our program color, but you have to have a legitimate reason why green is being used. Again, this is just what I've been informed of. I'm not necessarily, it's not my opinion, but that I think is the best answer in my overview. Like, I don't think they're going to take away purple engineering sweaters, but I do think that they're going to be very cautious about green cups that have a shamrock on it because they're worried about it ending up on our name with alcohol.
Because I see that you've been waiting a while, so.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, yeah.
And just to add to Vicky's point, from all of the conversations that I've had with licensing trademarking, which has been a ton, a lot of the focus has been put on the on-campus retailers to begin with. I know there was a previous comment made by Dr. Nicky, that there are obviously other groups who are producing things that maybe hold the trademark, maybe do not, maybe won't be in green. And they have discussed that they're focusing on campus retailers first, as they don't have the infrastructure. So that was totally right. But what they have said is that a lot of club logos are actively going against Queen's licensing and trademarking. And that is a secondary priority as of now, and will come up when it comes up if they're looking to produce merchandise. And logos would be changed at that point to include a squash Q or the color green, and there isn't necessarily a valid reason for green being within it. So it's definitely a slow process and will continue over years to come. Did that answer?
Just like a follow-up question based on the information that was shared. So does that mean like whatever these discussions, like however these go, when it comes to these outlets, like chances are this will set a precedent for clubs across Queen's campus when it comes to branding and marketing?
Yes. Okay. I would also just like to say, in addition to that, I think from my previous statement of why they started with retailers like Tricolor or Campus Equipment Outfitters or All Five Designs is because a lot of student groups do purchase through the on-campus retailers. And so with the focus being put on those retailers, they do have a little bit more control of how the trademarks are being used because we're having to submit anyways. And so I think that's where it's begun. But yes, it seems like it will eventually grow into a larger trademarking situation.
Thank you. Are there any other questions this time? I think I'll take 3 more questions. Start off with me and Sylvie, then Hamza. Sylvie.
Obviously around to lead this Ashton. I just wanted to ask specifically on green cups is a bit concerning. Because I don't know in Russell we have a lot of green cups that have already been made, but I want to ask specifically, and if anyone here can clarify, but anything. Obviously, there are a lot of stakeholders involved, and there are a lot of difficult conversations being had if they have already. So how does this all factor into this? Because I know, like, I don't know, the Commerce, for instance, the marketing office determines the Commerce copyright. Right? Or in Westlaw, for instance, we couldn't use the crown anymore because of I think Alec can possibly touch on this a bit more. But there were some issues with res lights and housing ancillary at that. So in terms of what we're doing here, is this does this set the precedent for everything? Or I don't know, are there still other channels that we have to go through to get other things done? And other stakeholders that have to be consulted in other regards. I apologize if that's a very vague question, but if anyone has any information that could possibly help, because it's a very complex issue, of course, and there's lots of discussion. But I appreciate it.
All right, Steve, you have an answer to this question.
It's actually just the this is not something where it's like, it's in the beginning stages, like, I know you mentioned your presentation, it's not like they're consulting students at fresh at this point, like, it really does sound like they've already gone through the process of starting to enforce it. When you look at their website, they have, especially around clubs, like they have like a guide on like what clubs should look like their merchandise, like what their queue should look like. There's like specific wording on not having a swash with your queue. An example is like when you look at the trademark words, they have do not typeset trademark words in display, decor, script, or italic fonts. They have specifically the kinds of fonts that they're okay with you using. When it comes to club logos, they specifically have can be created using a Q shape and crown dissimilar from those in the logo. So they have pictures, and I'll turn that off, and they have pictures of what you can do and what you cannot do. So it looks like the policy is well already in motion, and they have all this information and it's in there. I think what we're seeing now though is that like it's finally caught up to us in the sense that for the longest time it was like whatever, we're not paying attention to you, so it's fine. And so now it's like they're actually enforcing their policy. Now as students, like I think collectively the sentiment here is like we're a little worried about our expression of creativity and what this means for the work that we do with our clubs and how we identify with Queens and Queens life and Queens student spirit. And I think that the two of them are working really hard to ensure that the incomings are transitioned on this being something that they're willing to go to the university and talk to them continuously about. I was not at the meeting, but from what they said up there, I don't necessarily know how well that went. That said, though, like I would use as many avenues as possible to talk about this. Like if you have access to whatever talk about it there. Like I know this affects multiple clubs. We've had meetings on behalf of clubs, like over the 97 meetings, and we've advocated on behalf of clubs who receive emails from trademarking. And I'm a little worried. I know that the response was, they could send a cease and desist, but like imagine like you're like, basically almost suing all the students, which is like a little worrying. But that is kind of my answer.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All of it. So the conversations that we had revolving this don't change often. What is the goal of a fourth grader university?
I think that's a whole other conversation. I was trying to get ahead of ourselves. But our concerns, I'm sure you never expressed the same type of get mind. It's natural to after conference for arguing against that. We just firmly believe that the current way it's being administered is illicit. So we're open to working with the trademark team to figure out how to change these risks, but for the time being, especially what is all shared, so we see a significant change in approach, we can see it as something with that. Do you want to see that as well?
Just one more thing. I'm sorry. I guess just to also kind of answer that question about changes, I think at least from the perspective of Tricolor and other student leaders that I've talked to about this issue, the main goal is to not have this very rigid policy. There is definitely an understanding in my opinion, that there needs to be protection of a brand. The optics of Queens is important, and how we are perceived in the greater world. But I think what is important is that it can't be blanket, and that every case needs to be treated differently, and that's not what we're seeing currently, and that's, at least from my perspective, what I am advocating for, is that not everything that goes against the trademark is harming the brand, and that needs to be recognized.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right, Sylvie.
So I kind of comment related to is a question about having some sign off on the letter. As far as synchronous on that hasn't happened. I think there's a question to be considered whether we want every single members that want to support this sign on to it, or just the person might feel easier to get them to sign up on it. But I'm open to facilitating anyway.
Right. Questions or
Also, President, in speaking with the Copyright Office, they stated that they would like to take over and kind of lead societies of the process of creating and distributing merchandise on our behalf that aligns with their copyright. I was wondering if this was the impression that you received as well, or if this is something that is going to happen going forward.
That is, I mean, I'm new to that. I'm not sure that's in the details conversations here.
That has not come up because Authority comes up on their merch right now. That has not been something that has been mentioned, that has not even been considered or approached to us like these assistant marketing. I think that really stifles the creativity of students in what each student group wants to do with their merch that represents their life activities and what their experience has been. If I hear anything different, I will absolutely tell AMS executives as soon as I hear, so that we get to assembly members as soon as possible, because that is definitely a greater issue than I think what we are currently discussing.
Agreed. I think there's two parts to this. Well, first of all, as an assembly, I think it's our job to try and follow up issues like this to reach the executive and other members of the assembly who have the influence to try and deal with these things. And secondly, it's disappointing. I know as a university, I'm sure if you speak to other students who are at different schools, as student government, we're lucky to have a lot of autonomy. I know the AMS is one of the most autonomous student governments compared to other schools, and the way that the faculty societies function is also kind of an anomaly, especially if you ask other schools. So I know that's something that I hold close to my heart and very mindful of. So to hear that we're taking steps away from that at an institutional level is very significant. Thank you everybody for your input.
Have one more follow-up on this?
Yeah, just a response to that question as well from the engineering side perspective. We, as you might imagine, Smith Engineering is very worried, well, not worried, but very focused on their brand after the recent donation. So we were given a set of, it's true, we were given a set of Smith Engineering designs to sell at CEO in addition to our own designs. So we do sell those. We're not allowed to use the Smith brand for anything we've designed. They just gave us designs. The Smith stuff does not tend to sell as well as the student-made designs, but we have both in store. So it hasn't been a full proposed, we want to make all your designs, but anything using the faculty's brand, we don't even have guidelines for how to play with it, we just can't. So that's how it's been handled, but we predominantly sell our other stuff because it does better.
To that, I can speak to the Smith Commerce side of things. I can speak to the Smith Commerce side of things because we did actually go with our marketing office for the last year, and they have been cracking down on like our logo design. And their certain restrictions are anything that has Smith in it has to be approved by them. And by approval, it's like they lock up potential logos, and we can pick from that. But we don't actually get to use Smith, and if anyone is found to use Smith, you are told so that we're not allowed and you have to like rebrand. This also doesn't just have to do with design, but has to do with the colors and all of that. Font, they have a full like marketing guideline, so it's now a choice that our students have to make as to like if they choose to use the Smith name, they have to buy it.
Yeah, that's disappointing. I think it's especially disappointing given that there's been like, especially as we're seeing students express themselves using the Queen's brand in so many newer ways. I know we see some people with the new PFA hoodie, which is such a cool hoodie, and to see Queens moving away from something like that is quite disappointing. Just as we feel like we're taking steps in the right direction, maybe we'll go the opposite. So thank you everybody for your input. I think I'll
yeah, so it does seem that we have reached consensus at this point. If you guys do have further comments, want to like speak about this further, we have the break to do that. You have to do that. Say, right now, let's just vote on this motion. Motion for trademark concerns. All those in favor, please use your card. All those opposed, all those abstaining. This motion clearly passes. At this time, I'd highly appreciate a motion. Great. I will pass this. We seconder. All right, all those in favor? This one was really fast. Robert,
Great time. Does it work now?
I was just gonna say, we haven't voted on it yet. No, can we vote on adding the motion to the agenda?
All those in favor of adding this motion to the agenda? All those opposed? This motion totally passes.
Okay, we'll add it.
Yeah, it's been added.
The last one or just one?
You wanna?
Yeah, let's vote on it.
You wanna do it right now? Or?
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna be speaking on the motion that Sylvia just brought to us. Go for it, Sylvia.
Okay. Does it work? So I just wanted to start off and say that Ruth. Working with Ruth has been wonderful all year. We know how difficult it can be to be the first female Black vice president of society, and we wanted you to know that your efforts and commitment to the society are appreciated. They're valuable and they're recognized. Every person brings something unique to the table, and given this assembly is a recognition of Black History and Futures Month, we just wanted to celebrate everything that you brought forward today.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, this is all not easy, but I really appreciate that. I needed it. This was a rough. Monday's been so long. I feel like I've been doing it for a week now. But thank you so much.
Yeah, I think we can all hopefully say that Ruth has been an incredible mentor. Even working as a commissioner, I've had some really hard times, and she's always been there for me, even though sometimes we may argue because we're a little too alike. But I think all in all, she's brought nothing but greatness to this organization and has really honestly changed it for the better.
Thank you so much. So all those in favor of recognizing Ruth as the first ever female executive, Black executive, please bring your placards. This motion clearly passes. Right, we are now going to be moving on to our next motion, motion 5-6, restructure, moved by VP Asande and seconded by Commissioner Amir. And it is that AMS Assembly support the restructure proposal for the Social Issues Commission that will be delivered to the AMS Board of Directors as presented in Appendix B1.
Oh, okay, so this is a little bit about like the SIG restructure. Okay, so a little bit of what we'll be going through today, a little bit of a background what the current SIG structure looks like, some of the challenges that we've incurred with the current structure, and what some of those proposed changes are, and how hopefully they'll continue to benefit the commission. Okay, so as a background, hopefully at this point you know a little bit about what the SIG is. So the SIG is the main guiding force equity advocacy here at Queens and within the AMS. We really focus on fostering inclusion and emphasize all our common choices. We restructured in 2021 to create an internal and external portfolio for kind of continuing the more on the policy side and as well as student advocacy. And then some of the key initiatives that our commission runs are career station, the equity town halls, our accountability cafes, our cultural crossroads potluck, and continuous policy reform. So this is a little bit of what the current structure looks like. So we have two commissioners, myself and Annie. We both report to Ruth, and then we've got so many people under us that kind of dual report to the both of us. So we've got Equip, which is our career initiatives. We've got our Black Initiatives Coordinator, who was like first time role this year. Our accessibility queens, like kind of lead. We've got two collective reflections editors in chief. We have two racial, ethnic, and cultural inclusion leads. We've got a marketing deputy and then an Indigenous research coordinator. Equip, AQ, and REC and CORE all have committee members under them that they kind of sit on the team work on that. So what are the challenges with the groups and addressing a lot of these inequalities around the world, at least we need to start from home and make sure that it is equitable there. Also, there's stronger leadership, ensuring that there is continuous kind of quality and capacity between everybody that's in our commission to continue to really supporting students. And honestly, sustainability, establishing kind of a really sustainable governance model within our commission will ensure that there's a continuous support from us to marginalized students and ensure that there's better resources and impactful initiatives that it goes up to. So yeah, so a little bit of a conclusion of everything I just talked about. This restructure really just aims to prioritize equity, sustainability, and impactful programming within the commission, aims to reduce burnout, and ensures that there's fair compensation for all of our team members' labor, and as well as strengthens the AMS's commitment to inclusivity and student leadership. Yeah. Questions? Thank you.
No questions on the floor this time? Alright, seeing as there are no questions, we will now be voting. Go for it.
Jack Walker, NSOC president. Sorry, I'm over here. Computer's almost done. Just curious, sort of overall, what the impact on the cost of the SIG portfolio is going to look like in this.
So a lot of it comes from, because our honorariums will then kind of be redistributed to ensuring that these students could be paid, and because of the model we work, it doesn't really cost the SIG much extra, as well as some of the programming that has changed around. It's still kind of within our budget to ensure that everybody gets fairly compensated without continuing to incur higher costs for the membership.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? Seeing as there are no other questions, we will now be voting on motion 5, SIG restructure. So all those in favor of motion 5, SIG restructure, please raise your placard. All those opposed? All those who choose to abstain? This motion clearly passes. Alright, we will now be moving on to motion 6, CAC restructure, moved by VP Osande, seconded by Haggerty Godi. That AMS Assembly support the restructure proposal for the Campus Affairs Commission that will be delivered to the AMS Board of Directors as presented in Appendix B2.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll move to the next slide. So, yeah, I know it's a little bit small. I'll guide you through it. Currently, our structure is a little interesting. We're overseen by the VPUA, and I oversee currently 4 positions, including the Events Assistant Manager, International Affairs Deputy, Projects and Promotions Deputy, as well as all of news orientation. We can move on to the next slide. So some current limitations with this structure, and I've kind of split my presentation into 2 halves because we're looking at changing 2 aspects of the portfolio. So the first one is with the discontinuation of news orientation, which is a decision that was made last year and was passed through AMS board. The Campus Affairs Commission has really lost a major part of its mandate and lost a lot of ability to do programming, especially directed towards international students. Currently, we have the Deputy of International Affairs, and our current Deputy of International Affairs is awesome. She brings a lot of passion to the role and experience. However, we're looking at doing a few new things. For example, starting next year, we're partnering with the Queen's University International Center to try and set up an international mentorship program, which could provide peer-to-peer support to international students. Given the sort of breadth of this role and the introduction of some new volunteer positions that we're looking at getting, it's just unfeasible for a volunteer honoraria person to take on this much of a load, and we also want our international voices to be compensated fairly. So, proposed solution to this problem is transitioning this deputy position into an hourly wage position, working approximately 10 hours a week. This provides a lot of benefits, the first one being it has a direct improvement on the Campus Affairs Commission's ability to provide programming and support to international students. That's in addition to that, this international student voice can also help improve our advocacy, especially as it relates to some of the external bodies that we sit on, including but not limited to USA. And then again, just having another wage staff under the Campus Affairs Commission allows for more support for some of our larger scale initiatives, such as harm reduction programming, our room accessibility audit, and others. In addition, this new International Affairs Director will oversee three positions, including 2 International Affairs officers and a marketing coordinator, just to help bolster our ability to provide programming and also hold more office hours. So, okay, I think there might have been a slide that missed. It was basically just the structure. They'll be overseeing the 2 officers. Yeah, there we go. It's pretty simple. We'll have a little partnership with the Quick to have our international affairs mentors, and then on the other side, this is more AMS facing, we'll have our international affairs officers and our marketing coordinator just to promote programming. We can go back a slide. Okay, so the second half of my portfolio is more related to some of the special events and larger scale initiatives that the Campus Affairs Commission is taking on next year. So one of the current limitations of our portfolio is just due to an increase in event sanctioning demand, particularly during orientation and homecoming. As you can see, the number of events that were approved during the orientation period or submitted almost like over doubled from last year. And just given this increased demand and workload on myself, the incoming team, there's not as much ability for us to take on larger scale projects. In addition to that, with the removal of the concert from the ORT portfolio and potential moving into the campus affairs portfolio, we want to have a paid position that can help support some of those larger scale programs. So, very similar to our previous proposed solution, this is just transitioning an already existing role into an hourly wage position with some updated job descriptions. So our projects and promotions deputy would be elevated into a special projects director, which can help support some of our larger initiatives. We want them to start in August, just if the concert is going to happen under the Campus Affairs Commission, we need that time for planning. And also this position can help ensure the long-term sustainability of our larger events through risk mitigation practices, so focusing on all aspects of risk mitigation, including finance, safety, and also reputation. Okay, last slide here. So just the financial impact of these changes. With the removal of mutes, we're seeing a reduction in our personnel costs of about $18,500. And with the addition of both the International Affairs Director and a Special Projects Director, who would be working 10 and 15 hours separately, we have an overall positive change in our personnel costs of $3,000. So we're saving a little bit of money in our personnel costs, which can benefit students and also add some new paid positions.
All right, are there any questions at this time? DPS on it?
I don't have a question, but I also just want to add on a couple of further points. So first thing, collaborating with the university, we're well aware of how sometimes that can work. So this is going to definitely be one of those things where it's going to work kind of the way we do all of our other collaborations. It's supported by, and the EMS mandate will remain protected, and what we're trying to do will also remain protected, as well as our autonomy. So that's number one. Number two, yes, youth was expensive, but again, youth is gone now. So like that's a positive thing considering how we're replacing it. And then I just also want to emphasize that the special projects will be really important in supporting our larger scale harm reduction initiatives. We've been working really closely with the city of Kingston to encourage the university to, work a little bit with us in terms of the alcohol policy and a couple other policies that limit the large scale events that we can have on campus. So we're excited to have this role in there, and even if it doesn't look like a concert this year, because it's already February, time is going, a concert costs money. And so even if it doesn't look like a concert in the next year, I think that this role will help set up the Campus Affairs Commission and subsequently the AMS to be able to support those larger scale initiatives, including hopefully a concert. I know Rowan started talking to a couple people. I have the Western contacts ready to go to concerts as well, so we're working on it, and I'm working very closely with my incoming Elizabeth Versa to ensure that we're actually able to do something and we're passing that information on. So those are just some notes to add.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this time? Alright, seeing as there are none, we will now be voting on motion 6, CAC structure. All those in favor, please raise your time card. All those opposed, please abstain. This motion clearly passes. Alright, now we're moving on to motion 7, orientation changes, moved by VP Osande, seconded by President Shiraki. And it is that AMS Assembly approve the change of responsibility for orientation from the VP University Affairs to the AMS President and direct the Secretariat to work with the Executive to present a constitutional mandate for the ORT office, name subject to change, and make amendments to the AMS Constitution, including but not limited to Section 251 to reflect the change of responsibility, April 2025. Sunday.
That was a mouthful. Okay, so I do have a presentation. If we could happen to her. Thank you. Okay, guys, look at my joke. Fall 2025 will look the same, but the ORT supervisor will not. Okay, thank you so much. So orientation restructure presentation. Next slide, please. So agenda, introduction. What is ORT? Cognitive and VPUA portfolio, rationale for move, implications for change, and revised responsibilities, including conclusions and next steps. So this is our current structure for ORT. We have Ali, who's right there. Wave, Ali. Okay, and then we have the assistant coordinator, logistics director, systems and support, equity director, concert and media director as well. So one thing to note here is that since we moved the concert out of the ORT portfolio and it's no longer an orientation concert, but rather it would be an AMS concert, that role has now moved to media and sponsorship. In conversations with faculty societies, I'm going to reference Commerce here, we've been struggling encouraged to improve our sponsorship, and so we're working really hard on that. We have a full person who's hopefully dedicated to getting us large sponsorships over for the next orientation. In the last year, VP UA Mills and Commissioner Ronan implemented a support team to support the ORT directors during the orientation period. And these 4 people are hired in August and support through the 2 weekends to help with moving tables, driving cars, getting the U-Hauls and everything else. Next slide, please. What is ORT? So ORT is the central coordinating body for undergraduate orientation. It's an AMS Constitution Commission responsible for coordinating undergraduate faculty orientation at Queen's University. Orientation is student run with separate orientation programs for each faculties. ORT acts as a liaison between orientation teams, faculties, programs, and university governing bodies. They're responsible for the financial coordination as well as logistical support, and also the fee forums and the meetings in Desort and a couple other meetings that we're expected to attend, including the Deans and Designates meetings. And ORT is also unsorted but without a voting seat. Next slide, please. So current challenges in the VPUA portfolio. So the bandwidth of my portfolio is not large enough to support orientation. ORT takes up more than a handful of my days. And it's also very different from my other commissions, which is the next point. So I've always described the commissions as waves. When they have their peaks, they have their peaks. So for instance, with Black History Month on now, they have a bunch of programming that they plan. There's gonna be a slight dip, they get a little rest, then they have the awards, and that's kind of how the other commissions will go. Whereas ORT is a steady climb, and then it's like chaos in like May, and then every other month, and then it's like literal fire in August and September. And that doesn't necessarily work for the way the VPUA is the way my portfolio is structured, because then my other commissions are left to their own vices while I'm paying attention to only ORT. And then another thing is the communication inefficiency. So right now, with most faculty societies, orientation is under the president's portfolio. So I know I've had conversations with President Olidis, I've had conversations with President Walker as well, and it's a lot of the time it's a little harder to coordinate those conversations because they have a very strong working relationship with Owen. I love your VPSAs, we talk all the time as well, but it's much easier for them to connect with Owen than it is for them to connect with me. They also have the President Caucus meetings where they meet regularly, and they have bi-weeklies with Owen. They don't have bi-weeklies with me. And so what this does is my role adds an unnecessary layer of communication, and that causes delays and a lot of times also miscommunications. Rationale for move. So a student-centered approach. So President's portfolio again supports students, commission services, and fact talks. If you hear Owen talk about his portfolio, he says, I'm the bridge. And so like we're hoping that with this move, it reflects that more. Stronger university alignment. So the president currently sits on the Senate and the Board of Trustees, and ORT's mandate comes from Senate. It's Queen's University orientation, and this move aligns with the MS's advocacy and what we can actually do with university government. So an example of this is I sit on SORC. I do not know anything else that happens on SORC except for me hearing it from Owen, whereas Owen understands SORC, or Senate rather, and if he were to sit on SORC, he'd be able to connect the advocacy being done within SORC to what's being done on Senate as well. And also in recent conversations we've had with the faculty societies, we've realized that our approach to orientation needs a slight tweak, and we're working on it internally, and those should be fixed before I pass on my role. And then lastly, streamlined communication. So again, like I said, removes the extra layer, avoids delays, and I think there's already an established relationship and trust between the presidents. Next slide, please. Implications for Jane. So when we talk about transparency, it's important to actually do what you preach. And so it's important that if ORT were to move under the president's portfolio, it will not stop submitting reports. ORT coordinator will still be expected to be at assembly because that's transparency, and a lot of students do have some sort of buy-in to orientation. Additionally, ORT, despite being in office, will still be required to bring its budget to assembly to pass because its budget affects faculty societies, and they need to be aware and also in support of how those finances are being spent. Next slide. Revised responsibilities. So, the AMS president will now oversee education equity, not campus affairs, not clubs, and not academic policies. That's wrong. But they will ensure the ORT strategic planning, budgeting, and policy compliance, act as a liaison between students and the university, and support ORT planning, training, and resources. Is there a next slide? You know we always have to reference Ange, and then that's Ali and his dog. Okay, so ORT leadership will transition with the incoming president in May. The budget will be presented to Assembly in March. So we have 2 assemblies in March. We're hoping that you guys pass on the first one, but if you don't, it's not the end of the world. Hopefully you'll pass on the second one. We really do not want this to go to the General Assembly like it did last year because again, transparency. And also, I've already started having meetings with Jana, and so she's being transitioned with the expectation for this to pass. Okay. Any questions, concerns, comments?
We're just gonna note you didn't submit the motion for, so I have to write it.
Okay. I literally told her in office what I wanted to say, but okay. Any other questions, Nikki? I'm not, it's okay, I'm not.
My question is in regards to the budget staying with Assembly. Is that something that the Board of Directors has approved that they'll give that authority? Because as it stands, like anything under the president, like the communications office, marketing office, IT, HR, etc., are approved by the Board of Directors. So this would be a change for them, and have they okayed that?
So,
Or will they?
in recent board meetings, it's become clear that the approach they want us to have to bringing things to them that pertain to governance is Assembly receives it first, and then they receive it after. That's the first note I'll have, but I will pass it on to the board. If you want me to answer the question,
You can answer the question, and if I have anything to add.
okay. And then additionally, if I'm correct, your budget comes to Assembly, doesn't it? So it's not new for the AMS Assembly to receive the office's budgets. That's number 1. Number 2, I think considering how important ORT is to our faculty society relationship.
I'm not arguing it.
No, I'm just explaining the context as to why we had it like that. Considering how important it is, we think that it's still very, 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 very wise for Assembly to have some form of insight into the budget. So the board would be more than happy to receive it as long as they know Assembly supports it. And obviously, the board will still see the budget. They give the overall allocation, and Assembly decides what lines go where. But yeah, I think if it was a problem, like, we come back to you guys. Let you guys know that they don't support it. Okie dokie.
Jeff Walker, I'm stock president.
currently under the purview of assembly that would no longer be the case if it was moved under the president in terms of like personnel or anything like that?
So the thing is, assembly has no oversight over personnel.
Okay.
So we came with the restructures because if you notice, the wording is not assembly approves in those motions, it's assembly supports. So board wants to know that you guys support our plans, but board gives us the final approval because board has that fiscal responsibility over the organization. And right now, the way it works is like, there's nothing that's under the purview of assembly, like with ORT being under my position, that will change. So we're keeping everything the same. It's literally just, instead of it saying supervisor when you go to my teams, or his teams, it'll say that for the incoming president instead. Everything remains. Did anybody else have any other questions? Comments? Concerns? Okay.
Okay, beautiful. Seeing as there are no other questions, we're going to be going into voting procedure now. So all those in favor of motion 7, orientation changes, please raise your placard. All those opposed, all those who choose to abstain, this motion passes. Alright, we are now going to be moving on to motion 8, Elections Ontario.
I'm back. Yeah.
VP Sunday, seconded by External Affairs Commissioner Drayden George. And it is that AMS Assembly recommend that members take 2 or 3 or however many minutes needed of their time to register to vote in the upcoming provincial elections with Elections Ontario. Actually vote in the provincial elections on February 27th, 2025. VP Sunday.
Hi guys, it's me again. Okay, so you know how in the beginning during my report I was like, it's really important that we exercise our democratic rights and we vote. So I was hoping in a little fun break after we've had food that we'd all take a second to, first of all, make sure we're registered. If you are not registered, it literally takes 2 seconds, like 2 minutes max, but we'd like to take about 2 to 3 minutes to register to vote or ensure that we are registered to vote. There's a lot of information on the Elections Ontario Instagram page. We're working in collaboration with Rector Nikki Boychuk-Hill to see what we can collectively do. Jade and I have a bunch of plans set in stone, and you'll see a lot of our rollouts coming next week. As I mentioned earlier, this is important. So please, 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 if you could, take a second to register. We also have an all candidates meeting that the CEA organizes that will be happening February 25th, goes room 108. You should all show up. Yes. I feel like I should have theme music.
You can vote in Kingston or at home.
Yeah, but we're gonna be here for the election, so like.
A reading week, if you're going,
But you can place an absentee ballot.
Yeah.
It depends, like you might strategically feel better about voting in Kingston or your home riding, depending on who you want to vote for and who other people in your town want to vote for.
Yes.
We will have ballots available for whichever you plan to vote on. Even if you vote in Kingston, you can vote in your other riding.
Guys, we're informed. This is making me very happy.
Just as an item of information, if you are going to be planning on voting in your home riding, you do have to register before a certain date to ensure that your votes be counted there as well.
Also, we're having booths like on the week of elections. If you guys want to stop by and help us out, that'd be great too. Email me with more plans. So how much time do we have?
Alright.
Oh, 10 minutes. We're not going to take 10 minutes. Let's do it.
Alright guys, any other questions? Seeing as there are none, all those in favor of taking 2 minutes to register to vote, please raise your placard. This motion clearly passes. You guys have 2 minutes.
Do we have theme music?
I don't know if this is serious. Do I want to go on YouTube? No. Oh. Can we do the music?
Guys, you can go on the Elections Ontario website if you would like to register to vote. Okay, like we were saying, go to the Elections Ontario website, and you're gonna see February 27th is election day, so you can either vote by mail, advance voting locations, or on election day. We'll know on the 14th. Yes, we'll know on the 14th where exactly the location polls will be, and that will also inform the work that we're planning on doing. We had a really, really good meeting this morning about what our options are, and we're expecting that hopefully everyone is willing to support us in the marketing and also in the outreach and potentially in the booths as well. I know you're all really busy, but we'd love to see your pretty faces in the QC over the next couple of weeks.
Staging, how are we doing, guys? Most of us finished registering. Have most of us finished registering already? Are we good? Yeah, we're good? Okay. All right.
Guys, if you have any questions, you can either email me or Jaden, and we will help. Are you registered?
Not regularized. Sorry? Alright guys, we are moving on to the next motion, motion 10, ratification of clubs moved by, I lied, sorry. Motion 9, March 3rd Assembly, moved by Secretary Garbidian, seconded by Ali Al-Safadi. And it is that AMS Assembly agree to delay the start of the March 3rd, 2025 Assembly from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. at the recommendation of the Queen's University Muslim Student Association to accommodate Muslim students during the Ramadan fast.
Okay, I'll just briefly speak to it. I know when we announced the special assembly on March 3rd, we had initially announced it to start at 6 p.m., but Ali and I went back to Kumsa because we know that falls during Ramadan, and the recommendation was to push it to 6:30 to allow students that are fasting to break their fast. Also, Kumsa is holding dinner, I think, at Quick, so they have extended invitation to anyone who's interested to go by before you come to assembly.
Anyone, any questions? Anyone wanting to speak on that? All right, seeing as there's no one else, we will now be. Oh, apologies, Dada. You go for it.
Honestly, a really good way to support the Muslim community here at Queens. Really, we go to the Quick during it. Like, they're very excited. I've talked to the co-president, and they're really hoping to see a turnout from non-Muslim students, just to kind of get, hopefully, a feel of kind of community, and we'd love to be there.
Thank you, Jenna. Rector?
Can you send us like a thing with, is there like a graphic or something, or does it just show up at
It's
6?
literally in every single night during Ramadan. The Kumsa hosts a iftar for like all the fasting students and all students kind of on campus on Quick. It's always in Quick. It's always when it's time to break the fast. So that's like gonna be around like 6:30, 6 something. So there isn't really a graphic, but I could ask.
Sylvia, you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, when I send out reminder emails, I can include that information in the email too.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak on this? All right, seeing as there's no one else, we are now going to be voting on motion 9, March 3rd Assembly. Oh, apologies. I mean,
If I didn't know anyone first year, for just something residents told me to come, because I think our soft sponsors cups
Amazing. Sorry, is there any other comments? All right, we're going to be voting on motion 9, March 3rd Assembly. All those in favor, please use your placard. All those opposed, all those who choose to abstain, this motion clearly passes. All right, motion 10, ratification of clubs, moved by VP Asande, seconded by Secretary Garbidian, and it is VP Asande?
I have an amendment to the motion.
Okay.
So specifically in the appendix, there's 2 clubs that we won't be able to ratify. We looked at it internally again, and in accordance to following our policy, like those 2 clubs are ratified by the ARC. The athletics clubs, they are not clubs that we can ratify. So we'd like to amend the appendix to remove the tennis club specifically and the badminton club, and have all the other clubs get ratified by those 2 because they have to go to our clubs.
Are there any questions for VP Asande in terms of that amendment? No comments? Okay. Oh, seconded? Okay. Since there are no other questions or comments at this time, all those in favor of this amendment of excluding the 2 art clubs, this motion clearly passes. All right, we'll now be going back to the original motion, which is motion 10, ratification of clubs, moved by VP Asande, seconded by Secretary Garbidian. And it is that the AMS Assembly ratified the new clubs from the winter ratification period of 2025 as seen in Appendix C1. VP Asande or Secretary Garbidian, do you guys want to speak on this?
No.
No? All good? Okay. Seeing as no one else, you're good. We'll be voting on this motion now. So all those in favor of motion 10, ratification of clubs, raise your placard. All those opposed, all those who choose to abstain, this motion clearly passes. Right, motion 11, CASA deferral, moved by VP Asande, seconded by Secretary Garbidian. It is that AMS Assembly defer joining the Canadian Alliance for Student Associations for the 2025-2026 academic year, which will count as the first year the IMS holds observer/associate membership in CASA. VP Asande, would you like to speak on this?
I would. I'm gonna sit down and speak if that's okay with you guys. So the first thing is with CASA, when the referendum. So with CASA, we had a non-binding question. I believe the results were about 85% students voted yes. But when our students were voting yes, so that was in October, and at that time, CASA has a conference cycle of 4 conferences starting in May and going all the way till February. So by the time the referendum passed and the vote was yes, there were already 2 conferences out of 4. And in November, we mentioned, when I came forward, I said, Drayden and I are going to USA's Student Advocacy Conference Week, and so we will be out of office for an entire week, and right after would have been CASA's November conference, so we would not have gone to that because, again, our capacity just does not allow it. We have that limited capacity where being gone from Kingston for 2 weeks would not have been possible. So at that time, in conversations with my counterparts at Western and McMaster, I was advised to hold off a membership till we can attend their foundations conference in May. So that would mean that it'd make the most sense for it to be deferred to the 2025-2026 school year. Or academic year, rather. Specifically in the AMS Constitution, after further consultation with the Secretary, it's found that regardless of when we join, it counts as an academic year, and we have a limitation of 2 academic years as observer members. So it would have honestly at that point not been feasible for us to join and only get basically half of the experience. With this deferral, the CEA would be working with CASA in the upcoming year instead for the AMS to hold that as its first year of observer membership. I think the biggest thing with CASA, and I mentioned this during our presentation, was to kind of look at how the AMS will be able to accommodate our federal advocacy. Because if you look at our constitution, the CEA that's one of its mandates, and over the last couple of years, our ability to do that has been extremely limited. We talked about UCRU a lot, and we talked about some of the shortcomings we've had with UCRU. One thing to remember, as and I mentioned this during the presentations as well, CASA has a membership fee associated with it that's mandatory. Will we know what that will look like in the future? If students are willing to vote for that mandatory fee, who knows? Our biggest thing here was figuring out if we wanted how we wanted to take part in federal advocacy, and we wanted to use CASA as a resource to learn that. They have a foundation, they've been doing it for a while, they have the full-time staff associated with it. But yes, so we were hoping to defer our membership to the 2025-2026 school year. I do think I rambled in the end, so I apologize for that.
Any questions or comments anyone might want to speak on that? Seeing as there are none, we will now be moving on or into voting procedure for motion 11, CASA deferral. All those in favor, please raise your placard. All those opposed, all those who choose to abstain, this motion clearly passes. Right, that wraps it up for our motions for today. We'll now be moving on to discussion period. We have one item for discussion period today, elections and referendum policy. Oh, two items, apologies. Secretary Garvidian, would you want to come and speak on this?
Yeah, I think this mic is working. So I'll start off by introducing the discussion item, kind of why we had it. Just for background, the election team and I have been trying to have a discussion about the fall referenda in both November and December assemblies, but obviously assembly was too long, so we had to defer it. Okay, is it better? Okay. But we had to defer the discussion because assembly was too long. For today's agenda, the discussion was partially led by a student submitting a request to have this discussion. If you go to Appendix A, the statement of the student that was submitted is meant to support and guide this discussion. Unfortunately, the student couldn't be here today because the website wasn't updated on time, and I apologize for that. But so even if the student couldn't be here, we still have their statement, and I would still like to have that discussion with Assembly. If you refer back to the student's statement, it says that the current structure of the student fee referenda is a direct consequence of the student choice initiative, and in the statement, the student argues that the triennial review process in which fees are required to go on the ballot every 3 years is a consequence of the student choice initiative. And that's not actually true for Queen's University or the AMS. As far as I could tell, I went back to referenda ballots as far as 1970, and I could find referenda questions where they had questions to continue fees. So as far as I know, BMS has generally always supported a review of fees on a certain cycle. I did see some evidence that at some point it was 5 years. It has been 3 years since at least like the late 1990s, as far as I could tell from our archives. Oops. Yeah, I can. So as far as I can tell, it has been, we have had the tri-review process since like the late 1990s. So to that end, I just want to say like the tri-annual review process isn't something new. The Student Choice Initiative did cause a lot of disruption to the student fee and the way we manage the fee slate. But the tri-annual review did not come out of that. The AMS has always had it. But to that end, I also want to recognize some of the concerns that the student brought forward, which is that the referendum process is time-consuming. That's true. They're expected to campaign. That's also true. Something of interest that Assembly may want to reflect on is when I went back to the archives, late 1980s, the budget for referenda was $150, which is roughly equivalent to $350 today. In comparison, referenda budgets that we give groups this year was $40. So quite a bit of discrepancy. If student groups feel like they're not being supported via the budget, I think that's a conversation worth having at this assembly. In terms of budgetary constraints that govern there's two aspects to it. First one, it's really hard for my office to budget for reimbursement for referenda-related expenses. We can't accurately predict how many tri-review groups we will have. We can't predict how many new or increasing fees will want to go to the ballot. So like, for example, this year we budgeted $1,000 for reimbursement across referenda and election candidates, and we've spent like maybe $300, $400 this year. We didn't spend most of it. A lot of groups didn't submit reimbursement requests. As far as I'm concerned, they didn't really spend the money that they were entitled to campaign. So there's two kind of sides to it where students aren't spending their campaign budgets, and that may contribute to fees failing or them feeling like they're not supporting the campaigning process. The other aspect to it, our budget has been reduced over the years. A, it's super hard to predict. B, I think it's just budgetary constraints. I don't give myself the allocation that's board. So that might be a conversation to be had. The other concern that stood out to me, well actually, it wasn't addressed in the statement, but I want to say, like, I do take the students' concerns very seriously about the tri-annual review process. I think there was some frustration about the fee failing. And I don't necessarily think it's related to the trial review process, I think there's more so a question of voter turnout on campus, especially with respect to the fall referenda. Andrew, our Chief Returning Officer, did quite a bit of research in preparation for the November and December Assembly, looking at voter turnouts in the fall. We did this year achieve the highest turnout in the fall term in at least the last 5 years, which is only 12%. So it's not that much of an accomplishment. So voter turnout in the fall has been low. We also this year increased the spending budget for marketing in the fall term. So comparing to last year, we spent, I think like we budgeted for 1,500 for this year's fall referenda as opposed to 0 last year. So we have been trying to equalize the commitment between the fall and winter referendum. But even then, I think there's a general lower turnout that happens in the fall term. So that does, just again, taking the student concerns seriously, I think that does contribute to, if you go into fall term versus the winter term, and students' chances of getting their fee passed because of, and I don't want to say it's like just the voter turnout because a lot of groups, again, aren't spending their campaign budgets. But there is a discrepancy in voter turnout that, I don't think we can ignore. We did go out of our way this year to equalize it as much as we can. Some ideas that I had in my head, and I'd love to get feedback here, but just some ideas in my head. No, I don't need the slides. Yeah. Is having all triennial review groups go in the fall term, so it's more fair for all the groups that are undergoing the same process, and then increasing the new fees in the winter. That was certainly with the plan that we had for this year. Unfortunately, with the referendum being planned right after reading week, made it a little challenging for us to get through all applications. But that's certainly something that I can leave for the incoming secretariat to have the referendum maybe later in November to allow them time to review all the triennial review groups to make that more fair. As well as increase marketing spending from the office to promote voting. So that's kind of it. The other thing I will say about triennial review, the Board of Trustees of the university has a disciplinary fee protocol that says all fees are supposed to be reviewable. It doesn't actually specify the number of years students are supposed to receive the fee before it's reviewable. But again, traditionally it has been 3 years, since as far back as the 1990s, as far as I can tell anyway. So happy to get more input, thoughts, and discussion on this item.
DPS Sunday?
Okay, I'm gonna project so Emma's coming. Okay, so I have some information to read on behalf of the Commissioner of External Affairs, Drayden George. He unfortunately is unable to be here, but he did send a lot of research that he's done on the Student Choice Initiative to support and add on to the conversation that's happened. So just from background, the Student Choice Initiative came in 2019, and it was supposed to be something to essentially make university a little bit more affordable. But what it did was it was very, very much so a shock to a lot of student unions, and what that caused was for them to have to re-evaluate their fees and their fee structures. So some important things to note is that the EMS has always had somewhat of a fee structure that allowed students to opt in and opt out, and so that was easier. Another thing as well was that the government technically was taken to court on behalf of that decision that was made with the SCI, and so it was overturned, and as a result of that, it was overturned, and as a result of that, we were able to go back to the system that we currently have now. Something as well that he added on was the current referendum process ensures that student fees are being used responsibly, and so what that does is it forces people to first of all have to campaign and ensure that the fee that does get on the ballot is in support and students are in support of it. Another additional part to that as well is that the current referendum process is one that is accessible to all students or all student groups that wish to establish one. And last but not least, the process of the trial review ensures that student fees are going to the appropriate places. And that was Drayden's feedback, Drayden's information. And then lastly, I'm going to add on my 2 cents. I do think it is really important that we talk about how accessible our referendum processes are to people. Again, I don't know if I agree with the idea of us not having referendums to ensure that our fees are what our students want, but I think that we definitely can sit down and talk and work with the assembly together to ensure that something good comes out of this conversation, because the student obviously felt very strongly about this. Yeah, that's it.
No.
Sorry, the Nursing Society? Go for it.
Nursing Society Heller, President Heller. I was just, Sylvie, you mentioned with the $150 in the 80s, and then how that would be $350 now. I think that when we look at that, that's not fair to look at because in the 80s we didn't have that social media access that we do now, and I think that is a very, very important part of campaigning now when we have that media access and all of that. So if we want to even say that oh, it would equal out to $350 now, I don't think that would be comparable because of the different accesses that we have now.
Sorry, Dr. Wojcik-Hill?
Keep it in that aisle for
Okay.
COPSA Vice President Cowan. I think it's important to have some sort of review process because we also have to consider the percentage of students who don't even know that they're paying these extra fees, nor are they fully informed that they can opt out of these fees. I'm looking at especially incoming first-year students who haven't hit the university campus yet and don't fully quite know where all of their money is going. And so I think it's important to have a process where fees are determined whether they should continue to go forward, because ultimately at the end of the day, a percentage of our student body is not going to look through the list of fees and not going to opt out of the ones that they feel strongly about. So there should be a way to remove fees that students largely do not feel should be paid anymore.
Thank you. Regarding the campaign fee or allotment, I do think it is helpful, and I think that's a really good point to bring up with social media because when I ran my campaign, I budgeted for ads because I thought that was going to be the best way to use it, and most of them, I think all of them, were actually rejected by Meta. And so, in other words, social media is free. I also think it's important that the AMS is maybe evaluating how people and taking account into how people are using that money and seeing if it aligns with our sustainability goals in that a lot of times people will make a banner that will only ever be used for 1 week and not in the future. So I think that maybe there could be some sort of environmental scan of how everyone is using that money and if it's aligning with sustainability practices. And the last thing I wanted to say is, as far as the information about how it's really difficult to budget for how many groups are going to come up, I wonder if there could be a fund where you always budget for, you always overshoot it, but then any leftover money goes to the club student experience grant or something like that. And point of personal privilege, I have to go.
Secretary Garbett, do you want to
Where's one after?
President Artsai Politis.
President Olitas Artsai. So as someone who recently ran a campaign which was not successful, the budget really, $40 is quite a lot. Realistically, what am I buying for a week? We printed out some posters, and that was pretty much all we spent ours on. Just because I'm thinking of the policy, you're not able to get stickers and stuff like that. So it does kind of, am I incorrect on that?
No, continue.
No, okay. Maybe I misinterpreted it, but yeah, okay, that's what I thought. So that's what I'm saying, aside from posters, what else could you really be buying? And I also think NSS makes a really good point with social media was everything I did. We did boothing and stuff, but social media was our main platform for it. I do want to jump in on the timing of elections. ASUS was not ready in the fall term to go. Our fail would have failed even worse than it did, I think, if we had went in the fall term. So I think giving student groups the choice of if they want to go in the fall or winter is critical because it gave ASUS an additional 4 months of planning and making sure that we were truly ready to go by that point.
Okay, lots of good feedback. I'm going to just take it one by one. Just kind of on the sustainability comment, our current election and referendum policy does have clauses about material being recyclable. I know Commissioner Fu has been working on a sustainability policy, which I think will intersect really well with the way we run referenda. So definitely good feedback, and I'd be happy to sit down and review that with you afterwards too. In terms of spending limit, honestly, I hadn't thought about the social media piece, so great comment there. the spending limit has been a piece of feedback that I've received semi-regularly over the fall term. A couple angry emails, I will add, about not having enough to spend or having to go to fall referenda, which brings me to President Olada's point. So the way it currently works, under the staff policy, and I think this has been historical practice, I'm not sure why, whether groups go on fall or winter referenda is supposed to be at the discretion of the Secretariat. The way that I've went about it this year, because I want us to remain fair to all groups, is I tried to put all tri-review groups on the fall ballot. Again, timing-wise, we weren't really ready to have everything go on the fall ballot, so most external groups or university groups were deferred to the winter. And I guess in my mind, what I would be thinking about, I think, and again, everyone can correct me here if you have other input, but I think having tri-annual review groups who would be notified by the Secretariat that they need to go on the ballot, they have to receive 2 or 3 notices per policy for that to be valid, and who are up for review, so they should know that their fee is up for review that year. I think it's more reasonable to expect them to be able to prepare for fall referenda with proper notice given to them in advance. I'm not saying that we should remove new or increasing fees from and make them go to the fall. I think they can stay and go to the winter, but just for tri-annual review groups to make it more fair to all groups that are participating and reduce the discretion of the Secretariat. I'm always trying to reduce that a little to make the process more transparent for everybody involved. So currently that's where my head is at, is we can plan in advance to give all groups that are participating, you if you wanted to, we can plan in advance to give tri-annual review groups at least notice to go in the fall, and let everyone, winter referenda would still be running, that wouldn't change anything about it, but it just more so reducing the discretion. Spending limit, I think having a fund is a great idea. I don't know how that works. So more of a question for exec and board. That can be explored later on. But yeah, I'm not necessarily in favor or opposed to increasing the campaign spending. That was one of the feedbacks. The other feedback that I got was about the scale that's based on the voter turnout. So currently our scale requires that there's different thresholds. So if we had 10 to 15% voter turnout, you need a different threshold to pass, as opposed to if we meet the quorum, which is 20%. Our scale is different than the SGPS one. SGPS quorum is 15%, not 20. So that might also be an item of discussion for Assembly to think about. That one also got me a bit of angry emails over the fall term about the scale that we have. Fortunately, I can't do anything about it because I don't vote, and it's policy as it stands right now. But certainly open to having that discussion if anyone's interested.
Anyone else need to speak on this discussion point?
Very quickly, is there any way for us to provide the clubs roughly how many people opt out of their fees so they're able to budget easier?
So we use, for budgeting purposes, we tell groups to budget for 66% opt-in rate, which is generally the opt-in rate from the AMS fee slate. Some groups that have been established for a longer period of time have higher opt-in rates, and they're able to budget according to that because they've received the fee for quite a bit of time. But our usual go-to is around 66%. It's, as far as my understanding goes from speaking to accounting, it's on the lower end. Most groups will receive more than that, but we do advise them to budget for 66%.
Discussion that is voter turnout.
No, it's clubs.
This one?
No, keep going. I don't need the slides.
Oh.
Yeah,
Club discussion.
Yay. Okay, so I was hoping that we could talk a little bit about clubs and some of the experiences that we've had over the last couple months with it. I don't know can they hear me on the live stream? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so as you all know, my portfolio supports the Clubs Commission. In the last couple years, I think it's become apparent that clubs need some tender love and care, some TLC. And I wanted to come to Assembly to start this conversation about if you guys have any resources, any advice, any potential visions for how you see the Clubs Commission going in the future. So just some information to add on here as well is the current structure of clubs. So right now, we have the Clubs Commission with the commissioner at the top working 40 to 45 hours a week. And then after we have the AM working at 20 hours a week. And then we also have, 1 second please, I'm just looking for yeah. And then we have the club's communication deputy, which is an honorarium role. And then we have the outreach deputy as well, the communications assistant, as well as the administrative deputy, which is an 8-hour-a-week waged role. So over the last 8 months in my role, I've first of all realized a couple key things. The amount of clubs we have, and I think we've brought up this discussion at Assembly before, the clubs that we have do not match the amount of support and resources we have for clubs. So I was in a conversation with Director Boychuk-Hill. She mentioned something that really resonated with me, which was it's not fair to the clubs or to the AMS to not have the infrastructure to support these clubs, but to even the clubs that we currently support who are not satisfied with what we're offering, we have to do better. Included in my Assembly report, I did mention how we are hoping to automate the system a little bit better to support this. So we're going in and we're first of all setting up a help desk with support from our amazing IT team. I don't know if you guys have ever had the chance to work with them, but Matt and Andrew are literally the best people ever, and they will support you through things, and through conversations they were so happy to help with this. I don't know if you've seen our Instagram, and this is what I mean where in the last couple weeks have been tough on clubs. I don't know if you've seen our Instagram. We had a huge issue with mass communication. So just a little bit of a tidbit and some background. When it comes to mass communications, there are federal spam laws that you have to follow. You cannot legally spam people. And so our IT team has a system where the second you send more than 300 external emails, you will get blocked. I've had that happen to me before. I was on vacation and I was like, what the hell? And I was not able to get back into my email till Monday, which is probably good for work-life balance. But in hindsight, it was really, really, really not fun. But that happened and we were supposed to send out communications to clubs, so we weren't able to do that. Another thing as well is we, for instance, had a recent clubs caucus where we talked about some of the issues that we were experiencing. Aside from that lack of communication, we were unable to get proper quorum at our clubs caucus. We have over 100 ratified clubs and less than 30 of them showed up to this. And now, obviously with this clubs caucus, there were communication issues, but even in the one in the fall, there were also issues with getting more clubs to attend. Basically, what I'm saying is, right now, I've come up with a 3-pronged approach to fixing clubs before I have to pass it on. And I guess in my Assembly report, I said, you cannot take your foot off the gas just yet, because in my head, I want to be not my problem, next year's team. But it is my problem because I cannot let someone else inherit that. And so in terms of the 3-pronged approach, I think the first thing that we're going to be tackling is policy. Our club's policy is well written, but there are some changes that need to be made to ensure that there's clarity and there's transparency about what our mandates are. We also are working with our IT team again in terms of improving through our mass mailing systems at help desk. And lastly, I think the last thing that we're working on is structure. And so we're hoping to include more paid roles into the commission. One of the first things that we talked about as well is reducing the wages that the commission currently works. My contract doesn't let me work 45 hours. It's 40 hours, and then obviously there's gonna be peak times where I work more. But I think, first of all, in terms of accessibility, the club's commission working 45 is too much. We also have an AM role right now that's 20 hours a week. We're hoping to increase that to 25. And then we're also hoping to turn other roles within the commission from, like I mentioned, volunteer into waged roles, or AM roles. So an example of this is the administrative deputy, or the administrative waged role. Clubs is an administrative juggernaut. It's literally so much emails every day, and a lot in terms of bank forms, a lot in terms of financial audits, and so we're hoping to also increase the hours from 8 to 25 to support that. And we're also hoping to add a position in that will oversee the finance coordinator, which will help be a point of contact for all questions about banking, the bank transfers for re-ratification, as well as the audits that we're expected to do on clubs through our policy. Another thing that we floated around a little bit as well is moving some of the what's called, not the power within clubs caucus, but ensuring that we can make changes to the policy when needed, even if we struggle to meet quorum at clubs caucus. So we were hoping to instead bring that to General Assemblies in November and April, because General Assemblies are a time when all students can vote, and so clubs can come to those General Assemblies and be represented there and have their voice heard without us having to make sure that everyone who's affected by our decisions attends Club Caucus. So I'll stop talking because I've said a lot, and this is a discussion, and I want to receive feedback because we're hoping to make some changes to ensure the commission's success in the upcoming year. But please, I am open to anything and everything, so I'm here to listen.
I can either project my voice, whatever best for stream. Okay. So to add on to like Ruth said, I think one of the main concerns is like a lack of like financial support for clubs. I will also just add that there are opportunities outside of the clubs commission, and I think that's a sort of avenue for support. So for example, the Campus Affairs Commission oversees the disbursement of the Student Experience Bursary, as well as some other grants like the My Isabel grant. I know other commissions and parts of the AMS also have those. So just in your roles, making sure that students, the constituents that you represent, are aware of some of those opportunities. I think one of the best examples I can think of came from CISA. They ran the Queen's Conference on Education, and we received a significant amount of bursary requests, and we were able to disperse a significant amount of money. And while it's not like a direct support for clubs, it can help support people being able to attend these events, and just more awareness that our bursaries have, the better.
Anyone else want to speak on this topic?
Lucas Bailey, Senate Chair. As someone who has tried to start a club this year and actually got paid over the summer to do the paperwork, all I wanted was somebody who said I was allowed to book a room. I've been trying to start this club since September, and I still have not had a meeting because I don't know what mess is going on with the University Central booking system. But as someone who quite enjoys governance and rules and reading through all this mess, I don't know how we have 300 student leaders willing to go through the bureaucratic nightmare that is trying to be a identified unit on this campus. There are tons of Instagram accounts that I get of people claiming to be Queen's whatever club, and they're technically doing it illegally. You're not allowed to say you're Queen's anything until AMS, NSOC, ASIS, whoever agrees and ratifies you, right? So I think maybe we need to be looking at this in a way of, do we need to be just supporting every single club, or do we need to make it easier for student leaders to just be student leaders, go out and do something? If it works, it works. If it fizzles, it fizzles. And at the point where they start getting 30, 40 people and they need bank accounts, that's when we need to start bringing in clubs and having the resources for those larger entities.
Yeah, I just want to say, as one of the co-chairs of an AMS club, I was supposed to be there. I apologize. And also, I think that relates to a bigger issue, which is the fact that it's hosted on Google. That might be something to consider, but all my other work emails, everything else is done on Outlook, and I have notifications set up in a certain way. I don't know, my calendars. It all works out for me in a very nice way, but the fact that it is hosted on the Google Suite, I don't really check the club email that often. I guess that might be a personal issue for me, but I think it's really a factor to consider since there's 3 co-chairs, and I don't know. Just food for thought, of course. I just wanted to contribute to the discussion.
Thank you for your apology.
Rowan, I saw that you wanted to speak on this.
Yeah, for sure. Sort of jumping off this point. I think I might have actually seen an event sanctioning form.
You've seen about 6, yeah.
For that, and unfortunately, because you were not AMS ratified, I contractually cannot approve it. But I don't want to speak for all of the commissions, but I think that clubs is in a really unique position where there are aspects of all of our commissions that can support some side of it. So myself, it's room booking, SIC, they do a lot of stuff with equity visiting groups, sustainability. So if there's any concern that you think could be brought to any of the commissions that maybe isn't something that directly falls under clubs. So for example, your room booking thing, one of the initiatives that my commission is taking on right now is trying to create a central map of all the bookable spaces on Queens and providing information about how students and AMS ratified groups can book those spaces and conglomerating that, because I know better than anyone that the space booking stuff can be a pain in the butt. So I guess maybe a larger call to action is if there is anything that you feel like relates to clubs but isn't directly related to the club's commission that us as the governance side of the AMS can support. I don't want to speak for all of us, but I'm sure we're more than willing to support you guys. Yeah, just
Sorry, point of information. So when I'm trying to book a room, am I emailing you or am I emailing somebody at the university?
Okay, so there's so many different rooms providers under the university. So the main ones that you think of are in the QC or McCrory. A lot of that is controlled by the Student Life Center, which is an AMS office. Apart from that, there is Central Room Reservations, which is a university body. They will email me to make sure that people are ratified if they're saying that they're a ratified person.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure I wouldn't be passive aggressive with the student.
No, you're good. You're good.
Any other questions, guys? Any other comments? Alright, seeing as there are no comments.
Email me if you don't want to say it in front of people, but you have feedback/advice.
You do that. Seeing as there are no other questions or comments, that was the last item of discussion for today. So that means we are almost done. If I could get a motion to close VP Sunday, can I get a seconder? President Rock. What's the motion? Oh, motion to close. Yeah, all those in favor? This motion clearly passes. 3 hours. Okay, we equal out.
I wonder what our student presidents are talking about. I wonder.
Oh, there were people already.
Super Bowl was yesterday.